Dr. Lukas Swan is a professor of mechanical engineering and director of the Renewable Energy Storage Laboratory at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Dr. Swan specializes in integrating electric vehicles and renewable energy into modern grids and advises on national infrastructure, grid capacity, and charging needs, with a focus on practical solutions that accelerate sustainable transportation and energy systems. As a leading researcher and educator, his work fosters innovation in areas that will define the future of electrified transportation and energy systems innovation.
I've been involved in vehicles for 30 plus years at this point. I started out in internal combustion engines and was given the opportunity via my family to get into advanced electrified vehicles at an early stage. And so I was riding around in them essentially as a teenager and into my 20s, learning about them and realizing that while they had some limitations compared with our existing vehicles, that they brought a lot of benefits and some that were non-obvious. They're exceedingly quiet. They're exceedingly smooth. They're very quick because the torque is almost immediate. And these changes bring a much higher quality driving experience to people. And then it has all kinds of other benefits too, like plugging into the electricity grid, which if your grid uses clean generating sources or low emission generating sources or renewable generating sources like solar and wind and hydro, then you're essentially getting emissions-free transportation as well, which is clearly a positive benefit for our society. But heating and cooling your home with a heat pump is another, or providing solar on a rooftop is another way that the average person can engage with their energy production and energy use in a manner that reduces their carbon emission responsibility, but also just brings them a more pleasant and a higher quality of living. To be honest, we all sort of still want the same thing we always wanted, and that is to jump in a car and get somewhere quick. Have it start right up, drive right away, give us good power and braking and response, warm up quickly, defrost the windshield in Canada. So that hasn't changed. And we've enjoyed the very fast refueling of gasoline and diesel vehicles for many, for decades as well. As we evolve the majority of the population into electrified passenger vehicle transportation, is a similar experience. A car you can jump in that drives around really quickly, warms up quickly, and is easy to recharge along the way. And this is where we're seeing advantages today in the fast charging networks, where they can deliver the kinds of quantities of energy in a very short period of time that we would expect like a regular gasoline or diesel refueling station. So I'd like to see charging of electric vehicles as we go down the highway over long distances reduced from, say, the present 20 to 40 minutes to, say, 5 to 15 minutes. My research groups focus on a whole host of these aspects, like how do we fast charge batteries without causing them to degrade? That's a principal one, but also how do we smartly charge batteries? So we work with electricity utilities and we work with municipal planners and so on to say, what time should these folks plug in at and how do we develop electricity tariffs so they pay for the energy they use? Everyone should be paying for the energy they use in a means that is broadly supportive of encouraging the use of renewable energy instead of, say, coal-fired generation or gas-fired generation. But we have to do so in a manner that is almost transparent to the users. So you have to make sure that the ease of plugging in, where you plug in, the infrastructure to get you plugged in, and the rate at which you're billed for the energy you use is very easy to understand and see the benefits of. people are used to internal combustion engine vehicles where they stop at a gas station and refuel on the way home or on the way to something. Electric vehicles are very different because there's two ways of charging. So the first is that they'll charge at home overnight, and that requires a certain degree of infrastructure. And the other one is that they will charge alongside highways during long distance travel at fast charge stations, and that requires very distinctly different infrastructure. You drive home, you pull into the garage or you pull into your parking spot, you grab the connector off the wall, and you plug the car in. No thought required. It's just like plugging in a phone. But to get to that point requires the addition of infrastructure. An electrician has to install a charge station at your home. That needs to be wired into your electrical panel with a new breaker. And that necessitates that it's going to apply a new load to your household. And at some point you end up with limited further capacity. And that's a big infrastructure challenge, especially in this jurisdiction that I'm in, where you go to install an electric vehicle charge station at home and you run into a limitation on your electrical panel. But I encourage people to go ahead and do it because more than likely they're going to continue to transition other loads throughout time. A second infrastructure difficulty is, hey, we're in Canada. People like trucks, and trucks are bigger energy users. And they require a faster charge rate, or they'll likely utilize a faster charge rate if given that at your home. And that presents a second infrastructure challenge. So I would encourage utilities and municipal planners to start looking at increasing the capacities of electrical panels in all new homes further up to accommodate the fast charging of vehicles. I think the biggest myths that I see, there's two. And one is that the vehicle can't meet their use profiles. Maybe they drive long distances, or they haul big trailers, or they need a lot of seats. And the wonderful thing is that when manufacturers see a market, see people wanting things, they build for that. Everything from electric scooters to sports cars to SUVs, pickup trucks, delivery vans, school buses, they've all been electrified at this point. To say that there isn't a vehicle that meets your needs is pretty unlikely at this point. So if someone thinks that they've got special requirements for a vehicle that are highly demanding, I'd encourage them to look at all the different offerings that are out there, and they might find that several meet their needs, or they could potentially adapt slightly to make that work for them. The second one that comes up a lot is our cold winters. And do battery electric vehicles work well in the wintertime? And I can tell you categorically, they work fantastically in the wintertime. In fact, I absolutely love them. They're virtually all connected to some app on your phone. And you can preheat them beautifully before you go. And they have smarts in them too to preheat as well. And because you're plugged in at home, it doesn't even take range away from your battery because it turns on the electricity from the plug that's going into your vehicle to do that preheating before you leave. So it's a really lovely facet that the onboard thermal management systems of the vehicle and the heating systems in the vehicle make that vehicle just perfect condition for you when you jump in to go. But if they're traveling long distances, they may need to stop at additional fast chargers. That will take a little bit more time. The good news is those stations are being built right now. So there's no need to leapfrog a very long way. You can stop wherever is comfortable along the pathway. So I'm particularly interested in this because without it, we're stuck. You can't have hundreds of people, perhaps in a multi-unit residential building, all charging at the same time. It would overwhelm it locally. And you can't have a backup at a DC fast charging station alongside the highway, or we're all trying to get from point A to point B, and we have to spend an extra half an hour or an hour. It's just, I don't think we're real tolerant to that in this modern society that we live in. We want to move from place to place. So the build out of DC fast charging infrastructure at the front end is actually pretty easy because there's a fair amount of capacity in the grid. You can plug into the distribution cabling, which is usually about 25,000 volts, and you step that down for a DC fast charging station, and it's going to work pretty darn well. And we're seeing the rollouts of that right now. Various suppliers are coming out with lots of competitive products that can all be installed and utilized and charge every kind of vehicle out there and do so at reasonably high rates, which is really, really good. Where I foresee a challenge is as we have mass adoption of electric vehicles, we're going to need to roll out more and more and more of these DC fast charging stations. And so the question is, how big do you make it? Essentially, how many charge cables do you have hanging off from that? And where do you place them for maximum utilization while respecting the fact that the electricity cabling, our distribution and our transmission infrastructure to get electricity all throughout provinces and the country as a whole is in relatively defined regions alongside very particular roadways near residences and buildings and things. The other one that is a complexity on DC fast charging stations is just equipment. It's constantly in flux. So what we install today is at a certain rate. What we're going to install in a few years is going to be at a higher rate, which is beneficial. And it's a little bit of chicken and egg. Who goes first? Gasoline pumps all throughout the province and the world essentially all go at the same flow rate. And they always have gone at those flow rates. So we're adapting to making decisions of, do we invest now? Do we invest later? How much do we invest? And that comes with a growth period and changes and adaptations that we all have to do. I've watched that here in our own province, where the first set of DC fast chargers that went out had one plug. So if you arrived and someone was at it, you had to wait. Now we have considerably more plugs, so you likely don't have to wait, and considerably more stations, which gives you the opportunity to go to station B or station C as an alternative to station A if it's exceedingly busy. And I've had these things happen in other more built out jurisdictions, and it seems to work pretty darn well. With the geopolitical activities that are going on throughout the world right now, there's a serious, renewed focus on domestic production of the things you need. Building your vehicles here, building your chargers here, and deploying infrastructure that may not be the cheapest, but has a significant Canadian domestic content. So we've been a little hamstrung in the past, at least in installing DC fast charging stations, because the bigger market was the United States, and it operates at a different voltage level. And that meant that every single fast charging station that went in at Canada generally had an extra piece of equipment to account for that. And that made an extra cost. An extra cost is not good for consumers. So I'm really excited over the next 5 to 10 years to watch the local manufacturers, the domestic manufacturers in Canada, build vehicles and chargers that integrate smoothly with our electricity grid at our voltages, and therefore will come at reduced cost for all of us. I think it's really important for people to understand the differences between power and energy. Energy in a battery or inside an electric vehicle is a lot like having water in a bucket. It's related to how much water's inside that bucket. If it's full, you're fully charged, you have lots of energy available to you. If it's empty, you're discharged and you have very little energy still available to you. Power is the rate at which you're using that energy in time. And so think of a garden hose, and when you're spraying, if you're spraying and you've got a big stream coming out, it's very powerful. And if you're not spraying very hard, it's trickling out, you're not using a lot of power. So when people see numbers on chargers that say things like 50 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts or 350 kilowatts, that's referring to the maximum power that you can get from the charger. And suppose that your vehicle can take it. A 350 kilowatt charger is going to charge your vehicle very quickly compared with a 100 kilowatt charger. And this is particularly poignant because we're going to start developing rates where you buy electricity at a charge station, and it depends on how much power you're pulling. We don't do this with gasoline or diesel. You buy a liter of gasoline, it costs you $1.45. It doesn't matter whether you hold the dispenser slightly or you pull it fully, it's still $1.45 for a liter. But when it comes to electricity infrastructure, because of that tapering, it might change the rate that you're paying for each kilowatt hour that goes in, the energy that goes in. I encourage people to look at the numbers on the front of the charge stations and follow the kilowatts that are going in, and they'll learn when they might want to unplug. It's going to take people a while to get onto this. It's a slightly different, language, so to speak, for them, but the more numerical our society can get in understanding these numbers, the better. Well, there's lots of new technologies that are being deployed into electric vehicles right now. But I always caution people to realize that at the end of the day, it's a vehicle. It has wheels. You want to get in it and you want it to take you someplace, and then you want to get out of it. These other use cases, like supporting the electricity grid through vehicle to grid, where you discharge in periods when maybe the sun is reduced by clouds or the wind dies down or something like that, that is a potential that they can do, but requires a level of sophistication that means it must be automated. There are other aspects where people are going to benefit tremendously from having an electric vehicle at their home during, say, an electrical grid outage, where in the past we had to go and dig some generator out of the shed and pull the starter cord and just hope that it would start up and run and that the gasoline wasn't too old in it. In this day and age, you'll be able to go out and plug into your electric vehicle and run some extension cords to your critical components. Maybe it's your fridge, or maybe it's a lighting system or something like that inside your house, and keep things running for that period of time the electrical outage happens. I think that's very exciting for people, where you buy a technology like an electric car to get you around, but it comes with this added benefit of being able to power you in an electricity grid outage. My father said to me once, you can't keep a good technology down. People just adopt it. It may take time, it may take effort, but if it's really a good idea, we as a society pick it up and utilize it. And so I think doing as much as we can to show people that an electric vehicle or an electrified transportation can meet their needs and bring with it a host of other benefits that they didn't even know about is really crucial. So to anyone who's curious, I strongly would suggest you go and drive your neighbor's car, or talk to your neighbor, or go to a dealership and drive an electric vehicle and give it an honest try before you just stick with what you know.